Analyst Malaika Mahlatsi joins me now for a further discussion on EFF matters. A very good afternoon to you, Malaika. Thanks very much for your time. I don't know what you make, before we get to that piece you've written, just what you make of the whole episode.
Can you please repeat that question?
I'm saying just what you make of the whole episode. I mean, Floyd deciding to resign, Julius Malema deciding to hold a conference together to, bid him farewell in such a public manner. What you make of it all?
Look, I mean, certainly from last week, we do know that Julius is very hurt by Floyd's departure. He made no qualms about mentioning the fact that Floyd's departure feels to him. I mean, he likens it to him, him receiving Floyd's resignation. He likened it to him having received the death of his mother. That's the extent to which he likened the pain to. And so we do know, of course, that Julius is certainly still very hurt by Floyd's departure. And I have no doubt, in fact, I have it on good authority, that upon receiving that letter from Floyd, Julius did indeed speak to Floyd and try to obviously reason with him. And I think Julius alludes to that as much, that he did try to speak to Floyd to try and change his mind and so on. And Floyd was not prepared to do that. So, of course, there is a sense of him feeling very pained by the loss of his brother and his comrade. But there's also an interesting element to this. Julius is doing something that he does not often do with people, and which is to go an extra mile and to overextend himself into wanting to present this very united front, this idea that, we are not going to fight, we are going to respect each other, even publicly, we are not going to attack each other. Floyd mentioned the same in his own letter to Julius in his resignation. Julius repeated that same statement. And I think, at a personal level, of course, because they are brothers, because they are friends, that makes sense. But also politically, it makes sense, because if you think about it, the EFF has not been, as was alluded earlier on, the EFF has not been doing very well. I mean, it has been hemorrhaging a lot of support in the electoral support. It is really just not doing very well. And there's also quite a lot of discontent with the EFF amongst even its own members and supporters. And the EFF recognizes that, the only organization that it can still be able to meet at some point, to be able to, engage with in a manner that could be beneficial to the EFF itself, is the MK party. So more than any other political party in South Africa, the EFF does not want to be in the bad books of the MK party. It understands what that could do. The implications of not being in the good books of the MK party. And so it has to go an extra mile in ensuring that this transition of Floyd going into the MK party and many other members of the EFF who are expected to leave, we already know Newzroom has also left with Floyd. It has to make sure that those relations continue to be healthy enough that there can still be room for engagement later on at some point. Julius, more than anything else, needs this more than the MK party. The MK party is doing very well without the EFF, but the EFF, as a party that's hemorrhaging support, as a party that's going into the local government elections in 2026 without the kind of support and power and kingmaker status that it used to have, definitely does need to have great relations with the MK party. And the starting point, or at least the testing point for them, becomes how it treats its own members, its own former members who move into the MK party. So I think it's a personal reason why there's this kind of, performative, kind of love between him and Floyd and so on. But I think also there's a political consideration that goes behind that.
Of course, I mean, there's been a lot of speculation as to what led to Floyd's departure. I don't know what you make of it, or whether you have it on good authority as to what the real reasons were.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the reality of the situation is that, and this is not even something that should surprise anyone, right? Because any leader, in fact, most leaders who have left the EFF and have spoken out about why they would have left the EFF, have all consistently raised the same issue, whether we're talking about Andile Mutama or just a week ago, Newzroom head Vuyo Khoza, who was the former EFF KZN chairperson, and who was also in the EFF in the KZN provincial legislature. You've had, you know, the likes of Mandisa Mashego. You've got quite a number of EFF members and leaders, the likes of the Dr. Zimamgele Dlakavu and so on. You know, the younger women, the provincial, even national leaders of the EFF who have left the organization have all alluded to the same issue. And that is about the lack of a democratic culture within the organization. The insistence of Julius Malema on being, you know, the strong man, this metonymy of the organization, the person who makes all the decisions for the EFF and who really, you know, defines and determines the line of march, but who also has got a monopoly of punishment on people, who decides what kind of punishment must be meted out to who and so on. Everyone who has left the EFF has raised this issue. And Mandisa Mashego speaks about it in the context of sometimes it's not even Julius himself, but those around him who see this power that he wills and who therefore respond to this power, even when he is not doing anything. So the issue about Julius's absolute power continuously comes up with former members and former leaders of the EFF who do leave and speak out about why they do it. So I have no doubt that with Floyd as well, and in fact, I do, you know, like I said, I've heard it on good authority. I cannot mention who I know this from, that Floyd did in fact raise the issue about just the lack of democratic culture in the organization, but the extent to which Julius strangles contrary views, right? And Julius, and it's not even something that should shock anyone, because we saw, for example, in that gala dinner where he was addressing, speaking about how the EFF gala dinner, speaking about how, you know, he's very harsh on people who campaign against him, and the people he never loses conferences, the people that he supports never loses, and so on. He uses that kind of language, you know, and if you imagine if Julius is so comfortable using that kind of language in a public platform where there's the media around, what does he do when there isn't anyone around, and what does he say to people around him when he can say that in front of the world?
But Floyd Shivambu is also responsible for building that kind of culture. We can't today say, shame, poor Floyd. He was just as responsible for building that kind of culture, wasn't he?
Oh, no, absolutely, certainly. And, you know, one of the things that becomes, you know, I mean, even in the article that I've written for Eyewitness News, I almost kind of liken the situation of Julius and Floyd with the situation of the late Robert Mugabe, the former leader of ZANU-PF, right? That, for example, if you think about it, I mean, there's so many commonalities between these two situations. If you think about it, right, in the case of the late Robert Mugabe, it's not as if this man alone was the one who created himself as this metonymy of the ZANU-PF. It's not as if the kinds of abuses and horrors that he meted out on Zimbabwean people, he did it alone. He couldn't have possibly done it alone. He needed people around him to be able to do those things to people. He needed an army around him that was taking his line of march. He needed a central command that was around him, that was able to take these commands, that was able to implement the kinds of sometimes very deeply problematic ideas that he would have had in the human rights abuses and so on. And yet, if you think about it, the same people that surrounded him, right, that were with him, enabling him to be the monster that he became, really, ultimately became the same people who removed him from power, because those people themselves felt that, you know, this person is becoming too much of a problem. He's not even giving us room. He's not allowing us. We've been loyal to this person for so long, believing that in our loyalty, we would be rewarded. And yet he's not doing that. He's refusing to step down. And the people who ultimately removed Mugabe from office were his own comrade, his own friend, the current president, Mnangagwa, Emerson Mnangagwa, who, you know, from 1980, at the dawn of Zimbabwean independence, was a cabinet minister as far back as that, right? All the way into Mugabe's leadership. And I don't therefore see that it would be any different with Floyd and even those who would have been very close to Julius, that they were part of this machinery that creates a culture of intimidation, a culture of fear, a culture of purging, a culture of non-tolerance. But I don't doubt that they too would have done this believing that their demonstration of loyalty, their demonstration of brotherhood, their demonstration of being with this person all along, whom I don't doubt that they would have known from a long time ago that he is a problem. They would have, you know, believed that, you know, he would not do this to us, that he does with other people, that in fact we are around him when he does it with other people. But maybe at some point he will also leave. And because we've been so loyal to him, because he could have been so trusting of us, that when he leaves, he will leave this organization in our hands because he trusts us, because we've been in this thing together. And just like Mugabe, we see with Julius, then he does not want to leave. And then he even turns on those people that would have thought that they were loyal, that would have thought they had a soft spot in his heart because he's loyal to them. So it's not very fundamentally different, nor is it unique that people people who would have stood with a leader as he does problematic things and entrenched problematic cultures ultimately become the one who either remove the leader or who leave the leader alone, once they realize that even they too, their own interests are not going to be fulfilled.
Malaika Mahlatsi, thank you very much for your time.